Hi guys, it's Liz Check here, and I just wanted to take a couple minutes to go over the Unit 2 test review with you. Yes, we're still having the test on Tuesday the 24th, and you're going to be doing it from the comfort of your own home, but I want to make sure that I go through the all the words and all the concepts that are going to be on the test, and I want to go over them with you. And then we could then go over it again a little bit on Friday and again on Tuesday. I'm sorry, on Monday. And then on Monday afternoon, we'll have a special review session set up just in case you would like to review again for the test. Now, this is Unit 2. This is over Africa, the Byzantine Empire, and Mongolian Empire. Okay, so let's get busy. First of all, I need to apologize for the fact that you're going to see all these Far Side cartoons throughout this review. My husband went crazy and joined the Far Side Facebook website, and thanks to Mr. Thomas. And he literally went through and just added Far Side cartoons wherever he thought they would be funny. So if some of them are funny and some of them are not that funny, but we'll bear with it because he was excited about it. So let's get on with the review. First thing we're going to go over is a dynasty, and a dynasty. You have to remember there is a difference between a dynasty and a monarchy, and the big part of the dynasty is that it is a succession of power from the same family. And so that's why you'll see when we're studying Asian cultures that it's like the Han dynasty, the Tang dynasty, the Song dynasty. That's that family that has complete control over Asia for that time period. And the only time that they lose power is if another family takes it over by force. Okay. So again, a dynasty is a line of succession of power from the same family. An empire is a group of countries or regions that are all in the same area of the world that is controlled by one person. Thus, we studied the Roman Empire, the Mongolian Empire. We studied the kingdoms, the Ghana kingdom, the Aksum kingdom, Zimbabwe. Literally, all of those were empires, and they were all controlled by one person. And here is the monarchy. Now, the monarchy, yes, they have a succession of power based upon bloodline, okay? But it doesn't necessarily have to be from the same family, okay? And when you're going through history of monarchies, you will discover that, at times, a king might not have had a son to take over power when he passed away. And so it would go on to somebody else in the family, especially if they didn't allow a daughter to take power. So a monarchy is a political system based upon an undivided sovereignty of a ruler of one single person, a king or an emperor, for example. A city-state. Okay, a city-state is basically it's a country within a city or within the empire that has self-ruling. For example, in modern times, we have the Vatican, which is actually a country within a city within a country. Okay, the Vatican is inside the city of Rome, and Rome is inside the city of Italy. And so that is a good example of what a city-state is. It's at peace. Basically a city that self-governs themselves inside of an empire or nation. What is this map of? Look at this map very carefully. You've seen this map before a few times, but exactly what is this map of? If you guessed the Silk Route, you're correct. The Silk Route, remember, is a trading route from the the far eastern part of Europe all the way to the other side of China, okay, or other side of Asia. And then they also had a lot of little different routes that came off, spidered off of the main routes. And this allowed countries like India and the Middle Eastern countries to participate in the Silk Route too, and then Africa. And so please remember the Silk Route was a trading route that went literally from the Roman Empire all the way to the other side of the Asia. Foederati. Remember when we talked about a Foederati, we talked about them in the Roman Empire and how when the Roman Empire began to fall, one of the reasons why it began to fall is because the Roman legion, their army, began to become very weak. They became weak because they began to take anybody. It wasn't an elite group of men that were part of the army anymore. They needed more and more men to protect the empire as it got larger and larger. And so people eventually had to start hiring men to protect the empire. And so the Foederati was a group of men that were not even a part of the Roman Empire, that were hired to protect the Roman Empire. A Caliphate is an office of a leader of an Islamic state. And a Salafate usually is somebody who is related to Muhammad, like literally through kinship and through generations. They can trace it back to that Salafate is related to Muhammad. Okay, and so you have studied about khans, you've studied about emperors and kings, and a Salafate is a continuation of the different types of titles there are for all the different kinds of leaders there are throughout history. Inflation. This one is an economics term. I know some of you were like, I don't, thinking back to economics class, wasn't too thrilled about bringing economics into world history. But in simplistic terms, it's when the prices of items begin to inflate, begin to gain expense, and the value of money starts to decrease. And we see that in modern times with our gas prices. We see our gas prices go up as the value of our dollar goes down. And so you see inflation will occur with unemployment. And so that's just something that economists keep a very close eye on to make sure that everybody in our nation is as they're able to take care of themselves. Feudalism. Now, feudalism is not only a social system, but it's an economic system and it's a political system. And this occurred during the Middle Ages. And this all wrapped around the fact that people lived on the land, they lived on the land and they worked on the land in exchange for the protection of the Lord, the person who owned the land. Okay, so if you look at the picture that on the next to the word feudalism, you can see that there's farmers in the front part of the land. They're working the land. And then you see the castle in the background. Okay, and the Lord's going to live in the castle. And their wealth is going to sustain all those people working on the land for them, and in exchange for protection, food, and shelter, etc. And when we get into a little bit more into Europe during the Middle Ages, we'll get into feudalism and exactly how that works, and then we're going to compare it to different types of feudalism throughout the world. Pax Mongolia. Remember, I told you the word Pax was going to come back at you again. Remember, Pax means peace in Latin. And so Pax in front of Mongolia is peace in the Mongolian Empire. And yes, they had peace, but that peace was captured through fear. People are just afraid to rise up against the Mongolian Empire. And that's not really a way to live your life, is through fear. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the locations of empires throughout 300 and 1500 CE. In particular, there's 5 that I want you to know. I want you to know where the Aksum Empire is, the Ghana Empire, the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and the Mongolian Empire. And I do have a video for you on the slideshow. I won't show it to you right now, but there is a video that will show you how they all transitioned into and out of each other. But I do have some maps for you also to make it a little easier for you. Maybe. Here we go. Now, this is the Mongolian Empire. Now, remember, the Mongolian Empire stretches all the way here, what we would call modern-day China here, all the way across through Turkey into what we call Greece today, and then down into the Middle East and down into parts of India here, and then Southeast Asia down here. Their empire was just one of the largest empires ever in world history. Okay. And then we have the Byzantine Empire. And notice how the Byzantine Empire is just this area right over here that hugs the right where the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea is. This is what you would call modern day Turkey and Greece today. Okay. So you have to remember, big empire, the Mongolian Empire, not so big empire over here where Turkey and Greece are today. Then we had the Roman Empire, which, remember I told you, that it hugs all the way around the Mediterranean Sea there. And if you notice real closely that right here is the Byzantine Empire. Remember, one of the reasons why the Roman Empire failed is because Constantine decided to cut the empire in half. And because he thought it was getting too big to rule. So if we cut it in half and then I'll rule on this side and Constantine will run on this side, it'll be great. And it ended up not being great. And it began to weaken the empire. The Aksum Empire, remember, in Africa, they are right here. They're right next to the Red Sea. And then Ghana, their empire is right here on the other side, the west coast of Africa, and it's the nearest to the Atlantic Ocean. Now, barter and trades. What do you need to know about the barter trading route through Africa? You basically need to remember that the Berbers traded through the Sahara Desert. Okay, and with the Sahara Desert being a desert, they needed to have a reliable form of transportation. And if you can guess right by the little clip right there, yes, it's Mike. They needed to have camels. Yes, I said camels in order to be successful in trade. Who would have thought that the camel of all animals in world history would be so important to trade in Africa during the 300 and 1500 CE times? Now, what does the Kush have to do with trade and the Aksum? What I need you to remember is, and I know I didn't stress it that strongly when we were talking about the Aksum Empire, but you have to remember that the Kush were there before the Aksum Empire came about. And so in order for the Aksum to rise, the Kush had to decline. Okay? So in order for the Aksum to rise, the Kush had to decline. What is the relationship between the Aksum and trade? And what I wanted you to ask yourself is, what would geography have to do with the Aksum and trade? I want you to think about it for a second. The reason why the Aksum are so successful in trade is because of their location. They were right on the Red Sea, as you can see right there on the map. And this allowed them to put their items for trade on ships and ship them out and get to those ports to be more of an active participant in the Silk Route and be successful as an empire. Storytelling in Zimbabwe. Man, I had to give high fives to anybody that had Zimbabwe as a kingdom to research. I have to apologize. The reason why Zimbabwe was such a hard one to study is because they used storytelling in order to keep their history intact. They would tell stories to the generation. And if you've ever played the game Telephone, where you started at one end of the classroom with a story, and by the time it got to the other end of the classroom, it was a totally different story. That's exactly what happened with the history of Zimbabwe, okay, is that as it was passed down from generation to generation, things were added, things were subtracted, things were, elaborated and things like that. And so literally the Griots, the Griots, Griots were the storytellers, and they would tell the history of Zimbabwe. And literally, most of your African kingdoms, that's how they started before they began to write out their stories, before they developed a written language. And in Zimbabwe, they kept that oral tradition alive a little bit longer than the rest of the empires did in history. A jihad. All I need you to know for this time right now is a jihad means to struggle. And it could be to struggle in the teachings of Muhammad, to struggle in the Islamic ways, to struggle in the eyes of God. Any way, any type of struggle that as an Islamic person was going through during this time period was considered a jihad. Now, we'll get to the political side of jihad a little bit later in history, but right now, again, all we really need to know about jihad is that it means to struggle. Ghana. What do you need to know about Ghana and the geography and what it relates to trade? You have to remember, because of their location, just because of where it was located in Africa, this allowed them to be the most successful and powerful kingdom for trade. Is because they had if you look at the map there, they had literally the most traffic when it came to trade. It was coming through their kingdom. And so they were able to sell their wares and exchange cultures and languages and religions and things of that nature and be really a successful, powerful kingdom in Africa. In Africa, which was more valuable, gold or silver? Gold or silver? Oh, gold or salt? Whoop, I'm bad. Gold or salt? If you guess salt, you are correct. Remember, we talked about how, especially the Malay, had to exchange their gold, which they had a lot of, an overabundance of gold. Imagine that, and they had to change it for dietary reasons. They had to they had to exchange it for salt, for them to be able to live a healthy life. Mansa Musa was the rock star of the Malay kingdom. Okay, he was the leader of all leaders for this kingdom. Remember, he converted to Islam, and he went on his hajjah. He went to Mecca. Along his travels all the way to Mecca, he traded items. He exchanged gold for items. He threw gold and just were giving it away to people that were needing it. Literally, he was the rock star of the Malay Empire, and he later became one of the most wealthiest people in history. Genghis Khan. How did the Mongolian Empire stop? How did it stop spreading? It came down to the fact that Genghis died. He was so powerful and people feared him that basically when he was coming through, people were like, "You take our land. We don't want to fight you anymore." We heard the rumors of how strong you were. But when he died, that all ended. The empire did not get larger. It just ended. Yams in the Mongolian Empire. Remember yams? I said, guys, if you put down it's a vegetable, yes, you're correct, but it's not the answer that I'm looking for. Remember that yam is the Mongolian Empire's form of the Pony Express. This is how they got from messages from one side of the empire to the other end of the empire, is through writing them down, giving them to a messenger, and then that messenger going to the other side and passing that information on. The fall of the Roman Empire. Now, remember, I told you, you do not have to remember all the 10 things that led to the fall of the Roman Empire. Okay? But you do have to be able to tell which ones don't fit. All right? So please remember that the fall of the empire occurred due to overexpansion, meaning it got too big too fast. lead pipes. Remember, they were so excited. Yay, we have indoor plumbing. And then, they were able to use the plumbing inside their homes, but come to find out, they made their pipes out of lead, which caused illness. Okay, it should sound familiar, since we have Flint right near us. The falling of their armies. Okay, their armies were just spread out too thin, and they were taking just anybody. And then the Visigoths from the north coming down and invading and taking over the northern part of the Roman Empire. Corruption of the political officials, dividing the empire into two different empires, and then the political instability of the empire, not being able to handle the fact that it's so big, and then the two leaders butting heads against each other for control. Now, the test is very simple. It's divided up into 3 different sections. The first section is 10 just vocab words. It's a matching. You have 10 words and 10 definitions. You're just plugging in where they're going to go. The next questions are going to be, read the question and answer choose the best answer. And then the last questions are going to be, look at this map, answer the questions, read this paragraph, answer the question. They're set up a little bit like the SAT is. We will be having the test during your class time on Tuesday the 24th. Please make sure that you are ready to go when you check in. We're going to have the code ready for you, and we're going to get rocking and rolling on that right away. There will be a study session on Monday after school sometime to go over the study guides for you to ask any questions that you may need. And remember, stay safe, healthy, and I love you. And you're going to just do such an amazing job on this test, I know. Okay? So see you later in Zoom.